3 days after I stopped on an empty road to help two strangers with a flat tire, my phone lit up with a message from a number I had never seen before. The girl who sent it knew things about me, things I had never told a stranger. Things, honestly, I had almost forgotten about myself. By the time I understood why she had reached out, our entire friendship, and the careful line I thought I had drawn between strangers and something more, was already gone. This is the story of how one favor under a blistering sun turned into something I never saw coming, and the choice it forced on me and on two girls who seemed to share more than just a car, weeks later. It had been one of those days, 12 hours on a job site outside a small town in Texas, sweat soaked through my shirt by 10 in the morning, and a sun that felt personal by noon. I worked construction, and in July, the heat does not feel like weather. It feels like an opponent you cannot put down. All I wanted was to get home, drink something cold, and collapse somewhere with air conditioning. The road I took back was a shortcut, mostly empty, lined with dead grass and telephone poles that seemed to lean from exhaustion, just like I did. I almost didn't see the car at first. It was just a shape on the shoulder, shimmering under the heat coming off the asphalt, the kind of mirage your eyes play tricks with on a road like that. It was pulled half onto the gravel, hazard lights blinking weakly, as if they too were giving up in the heat. Two girls stood beside it. One was pacing with her phone held up uselessly, chasing a signal that clearly wasn't there. The other leaned against the hood, arms crossed, watching the road like she was waiting for someone specific. I almost kept driving. I will be honest about that. I was tired, and stopping for strangers on an empty road is not exactly the safest decision a person can make. But something made me slow down. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was just decency winning out over exhaustion. Either way, I pulled over. The first girl introduced herself fast, words tumbling over each other, the way people talk when they are stressed and relieved at the same time. Her name was Maddie. Long brown hair pulled into a messy bun, and the kind of energy that filled the air before she even finished a sentence. The second girl barely said anything at first. She told me her name was Claire, quietly, and then she just watched me. Not rudely, more like she was trying to place something, like my face belonged to a memory she could not quite bring into focus. I asked what happened. Maddie explained, a little breathlessly, that the car had started making a strange noise on the highway and then simply stopped accelerating, right there in the middle of nowhere, with no service and no idea what to do next. I am no mechanic, but growing up with an older brother who practically lived under the hood of his truck taught me enough to be useful in moments like this. I checked the obvious things first. Belt, fluids, battery connections. The metal under the hood was hot enough to cook on, and within minutes my shirt was soaked through worse than it already had been. Maddie kept up a steady stream of conversation while I worked. She asked where I was from, what I did for a living, whether I had grown up around here. Easy questions, the kind people ask just to fill silence. But every few minutes I would glance up and catch Claire watching me with an expression I could not quite read. Curiosity, maybe, or something closer to recognition. At one point, I found the actual problem. A connector had worked itself loose from the vibration of the road and the heat warping the housing around it. It took maybe 10 minutes to fix once I knew what I was looking for. Somehow, we ended up standing there for almost 40. Claire finally spoke while I was tightening the last connection. She asked, almost carefully, if I had gone to Lincoln High. I told her I had, years ago. She nodded slowly, like she was confirming something to herself, rather than asking me a real question. I did not think much of it at the time. I should have. When the engine finally turned over clean, Maddie nearly threw her arms around me, thanking me like I had pulled her out of a burning building instead of fixing a loose wire. Claire thanked me too, more reserved, but her eyes lingered a beat longer than the moment really called for. I told them to drive safe and turned back toward my truck, already thinking about the cold shower waiting at home. That was when Claire rolled down her window. She smiled, the kind of smile that seemed to hold more behind it than it showed, and said the words that would not leave my head for the next 3 days. "We want to see you again." I laughed it off, told her maybe I would run into them around town sometime, and drove away thinking it was just a kind thing two grateful strangers say in the heat of the moment. People say things like that all the time and never mean to follow through. I had no idea how wrong I was. 3 days later, on a Wednesday night, eating leftover pasta in front of the television, my phone buzzed with a text from a number that was not saved in my contacts. The message was short. "Hi, this is Claire. We met on the road last week. I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out like this." I sat there for a second, surprised first, then curious, then a little flattered if I'm being honest. I asked how she had gotten my number, and she admitted, almost sheepishly, that Maddie had snapped a photo of my work badge clipped to my shirt while I was bent over the engine, just in case they needed to thank me properly later. It was a strange thing to learn, that I had been quietly noted like that in the middle of helping them. But it also made me smile. We texted back and forth for almost an hour that night, an easy conversation that did not feel forced at all. Before I went to bed, she asked if I wanted to get coffee with her and Maddie that weekend. I said yes, before I had even fully thought it through. That coffee turned into dinner the following week, which turned into a movie night after that. And before I really noticed it happening, the three of us had settled into something that felt like genuine friendship. Maddie was loud and funny, the kind of person who made every gathering feel like an event just by walking into the room. Claire was quieter, more observant, the type who remembered a small detail you mentioned once in passing and brought it up again weeks later, almost like proof she had been listening the whole time. I found myself looking forward to seeing them more than I wanted to admit out loud. Maddie started finding small reasons to touch my arm when she laughed, to sit a little closer on the couch than friends typically do. I noticed it. I'm sure Claire noticed it too, though she never said anything about it directly. What I could not quite work out was Claire herself. There was a familiarity in the way she looked at me sometimes, like she was comparing the person in front of her to someone else entirely. Someone from a long time ago. I asked her about it once, lightly, half joking. She just smiled and changed the subject, the way she always seemed to when the conversation got too close to something. I should have pushed harder. But some part of me did not want to disturb whatever it was that kept pulling the three of us closer together, week after week. The truth came out on a night I was not expecting it to. Maddie had stepped outside to take a phone call, and Claire and I were alone in her apartment, the quiet stretching a little too long for comfort. I asked her again, more directly this time, why she had looked at me the way she did the day we met. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she told me about a day 9 years earlier, our junior year at Lincoln High, when a group of older students had cornered her near the gym lockers and humiliated her in front of half the hallway over something as small and cruel as the second-hand shoes she was wearing that year. She told me I had been the only person who stopped, who told them to knock it off, who walked her to class afterward without making a single big deal out of it. I did not remember it, not even a little. To me, it would have been a 30-second moment, forgotten by lunchtime. To her, it had been the kindest thing anyone did for her that entire year, maybe that entire decade. She told me she had noticed my truck driving the same route home for weeks before that day on the shoulder, recognized me the very first time she saw it pass, and finally worked up the nerve to make sure our paths actually crossed. The car had not broken down on its own. She had asked Maddie to help her stage the whole thing, certain that if she simply waved me down on an empty road for no reason, I would think she was strange and just keep driving. I sat there processing what she had just told me, flattered, unsettled, and confused, all at the same time. I will admit my first reaction wasn't gratitude. It was something closer to betrayal. That uncomfortable feeling of realizing a moment I had believed was simple and accidental had actually been planned from the very beginning. Every conversation since then replayed in my head a little differently, every coincidence suddenly looking less like coincidence. But underneath that feeling was something else too, a strange kind of respect for how much courage it must have taken her to do something so far outside her comfort zone, just for the chance to finally say thank you properly, in person, after carrying it around for 9 years. Before I could fully sort out how I felt, Maddie walked back inside, and the air in the room shifted instantly. She looked between the two of us and seemed to understand, the way close friends sometimes just know things without being told, that something important had just been said while she was gone. That was the night I realized Maddie's feelings for me were not just friendly closeness anymore, and that she had likely sensed Claire's were not either. Long before either of them said a word about it out loud, the three of us sat in that uncomfortable silence, each of us aware that whatever came next would reshape our friendship permanently, one way or another. I had a choice in front of me now, and there was no version of it that did not risk hurting someone who had shown me nothing but kindness since that afternoon on the road. I wish I could say the answer came to me easily. It did not. What I chose, and what happened between the three of us in the weeks that followed, is a longer story than I can tell here, one that involved more honesty and more difficult conversations than I ever expected to come out of a simple flat tire on a hot afternoon. But I will say this much. When Claire told me on that road, all those weeks ago, that she wanted to see me again, she meant something far deeper than gratitude. And once I understood that, I could not pretend I felt nothing in return. Sometimes the smallest moment you forget about completely is the one someone else has carried with them for years. And sometimes, when that moment finally circles back to find you, it asks for something you were never quite prepared to give. This is a work of fiction. All names, locations, events, and characters in this story are entirely invented for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental.